On the morning my life split in two, I woke up with the answer to a question I had never asked. A pale blue number floated above my alarm clock. Intelligence increased by 1. Permanent total, 101. I blinked 3 times. The number stayed. I waved my hand through it. My fingers passed through cold light, and the message dissolved like smoke. My name is Ethan. At that moment, I was 18 years old, 1 year from graduation, and so perfectly average that teachers forgot I was in the room while taking attendance. I had average grades, average reflexes, average height, and an average face that looked like a background student an animator would reuse to save money. 2 weeks earlier, the school had given everyone an intelligence test for a research program. My score was exactly 100. Not 99, which would at least be slightly tragic. Not 101, which would suggest potential. Exactly 100. Ryan laughed so hard he nearly fell out of his chair. Ryan was my only real friend, mostly because he had the social instincts of a golden retriever in a fireworks factory. He called my score mathematically mid, then bought me a vending machine sandwich because he felt bad. Claire, the class president, had scored 134. She did not laugh. That was worse. She gave me the polite smile people use when they think your future includes a name tag and a mop. I spent that first morning testing the floating message. I solved basic equations. Nothing dramatic happened. I read 3 pages of a history book and remembered about as much as usual. I tried to predict which piece of toast would pop up first. I was wrong. 1 point was nothing. That was what I told myself until the next morning. Intelligence increased by 1. Permanent total, 102. The third morning, 103. The fourth, 104. By the 7th day, I stopped thinking it was a hallucination. Hallucinations did not arrive at 6:17 every morning with better punctuality than public transportation. The number appeared the instant I opened my eyes, added 1, then vanished. It did not give me facts. I did not wake up knowing calculus, Mandarin, or how to build a nuclear submarine out of cafeteria trays. I simply had more room inside my mind. Ideas connected faster, mistakes became brighter, questions that once felt like walls became doors with badly hidden hinges. On day 10, I noticed our math teacher used the same rhythm when writing tests. Easy question, medium question, trap, hard question, sympathy question. The pattern repeated across every exam from the last 2 years. On day 12, I could tell who in class had studied by the direction their eyes moved when the teacher announced a surprise quiz. On day 14, I realized Claire tapped her pen twice whenever she knew an answer but did not want to embarrass someone. On day 16, I learned that Ryan lied by speaking more slowly, which would have been useful if every lie he told was not about stealing my fries. The changes were still small, but small changes repeated every day are not small. A drop of water is harmless. A drop of water falling forever cuts through stone. I began keeping records in a notebook hidden under the loose board beneath my bed. I measured reading speed, memory, reaction time, pattern recognition, and how quickly I could learn unfamiliar rules. I used puzzles, card games, music, and computer code. Every graph climbed. The increase was not linear in effect. 1 point gave me a little more speed. 10 points let me notice the speed. 20 points let me redesign the tests. 30 points let me predict my own performance before I began. By day 30, my total was 130. That morning, I opened a college physics textbook I had borrowed from the library. The first chapter had looked like alien scripture a month earlier. Now it looked badly organized. I read for 40 minutes, closed the book, and recreated every major equation from memory. Then I found a mistake in the answer key. That was when fear finally arrived. Not fear of the ability, fear of being seen. Intelligence attracts attention only after it becomes useful. A smart student gets praise. An impossibly smart student gets tested, studied, followed, used, and eventually placed in a room with no windows by people who insist the room is for national security. So I made my first real decision. I would become extraordinary in secret and remain ordinary in public. At school, I continued sitting in the back row. I answered enough questions to avoid looking asleep, but missed enough to stay forgettable. On the next math test, I solved every problem in 11 minutes, then spent 25 minutes constructing believable mistakes. I changed a sign in one equation. I skipped a step in another. I left the final question blank. I scored a 78. The teacher sighed at me. Claire looked disappointed. Ryan whispered that I had survived another academic assassination attempt. Bro was celebrating a 78 like I had just returned from war with 3 medals and somebody else's horse. I smiled because being underestimated felt better than being praised. Praise is a spotlight. Disappointment is camouflage. Then Grant came to our school. Grant was the kind of billionaire who treated every room like it had been built to frame his entrance. He was 33, owned a technology empire, and had donated enough money to the district that every hallway displayed his face. His company made phones, electric cars, medical devices, satellites, and motivational videos where he stared into the camera like sleep was a moral failure. He arrived in a black helicopter during lunch. The wind blew trays off tables. A banner ripped loose from the gym. 3 students ran outside to film it and got hit by a cloud of mashed potatoes. Grant stepped onto the field wearing a silver suit and a smile worth more than the school library. He had come to announce the Crown Challenge, a national competition for graduating students. Teams would solve engineering, strategy, and business problems on live television. The winning school would receive $10 million. The winning student would receive a private meeting with Grant and a place in his company. Everyone lost their minds. Claire immediately began organizing a team. Teachers selected the highest scorers. My name was not even discussed. Grant toured our classroom that afternoon. He asked students what they planned to become. One said a doctor, another said an engineer. Claire said she wanted to build systems that made cities safer. Then Grant stopped beside my desk. I was reading a paperback upside down. Not because I could read upside down. I could, but that was not the point. I had noticed a photographer behind Grant, and an upside-down book made me look harmlessly stupid. Grant glanced at my name tag. And you, Ethan? Every face turned toward me. I gave him a nervous smile. I'm still figuring it out. He nodded with the satisfied sympathy of a king forgiving a peasant for being born horizontal. The world needs people who follow too. The class laughed. Claire did not. Ryan looked ready to throw a pencil, which was brave because Grant had 6 security guards and Ryan threw like a malfunctioning ceiling fan. I lowered my eyes. Inside my head, I took Grant apart. His smile lasted half a second too long after every joke, meaning he watched for approval. His left hand tightened when someone mentioned his electric cars, suggesting a problem there. He avoided questions about the company's new battery. His chief engineer was absent from the visit. His stock had risen 16% in 3 weeks on rumors that the battery would change the energy industry. Grant had not come to inspire students. He had come to manufacture optimism before announcing a product he did not trust. That night, I searched everything publicly available about the battery, research papers, patent diagrams, factory footage, promotional videos, shipping schedules. I did not need secret files. People reveal secrets whenever they believe no one is clever enough to connect them. At 2:04 in the morning, I found the flaw. The battery's cooling design worked in laboratory tests but would become unstable after repeated fast charging in humid climates. The failure would not happen immediately. It would happen after customers trusted it. Grant's company was about to release a $1 billion firecracker with cup holders. I had $212 in savings. I could not do much with $212, but I no longer thought in terms of money. I thought in terms of leverage. I entered an online forecasting tournament under a random username. The tournament allowed participants to predict commodity prices, product failures, weather effects, and market movement using fake currency. The top 3 winners received real prizes. For 7 nights, I studied how tens of thousands of people made decisions. I did not predict the market. I predicted the predictors. When everyone saw good news, I asked what fear they were ignoring. When everyone panicked, I asked who benefited from the panic. I treated human greed like a math problem with loud emotional variables. I won first place by a margin so large that the organizers assumed their scoring system had broken. The prize was $50,000. I used part of it to place legal market bets against the battery launch through an account created with the help of an automated investment platform. I spread the positions across several industries so no single move looked suspicious. Then I waited. On day 42, Grant revealed the battery on live television. His stock exploded upward. For 3 hours, I looked like an idiot. Ryan sent me a video of Grant smashing an old battery with a hammer on stage. Claire posted that the technology might transform transportation. Teachers replayed the presentation during class. I sat in the back row and watched Grant hold the silver battery above his head. Then one demonstration vehicle began smoking. The broadcast cut away. Within an hour, videos appeared from test sites in 3 humid cities. Charging stations shut down. The company delayed shipments. Analysts started asking questions. Grant's stock fell 11% before lunch and 28% by the end of the week. My 50,000 became 480,000. I stared at the number on my screen. Most people would have celebrated. I did not. Money was not the victory. The victory was confirmation. I could see things before the world saw them, and the world paid very well for being late. By day 50, my total was 150. I could learn in hours what used to take weeks, but I still had to study. Intelligence was an engine, knowledge was fuel, so I fed it everything. I slept 5 hours a night. I learned economics while brushing my teeth, psychology during lunch, programming on the bus, and 3 languages through audio lessons played at double speed. I built memory systems, then replaced them with better ones. I stopped rereading books because I no longer forgot the first pass. My room changed. The posters came down. Whiteboards covered the walls. Strings of equations wrapped around maps, company charts, and social networks. Every problem became part of a larger shape. My parents thought I had finally become serious about college. I let them believe that. At school, I perfected weakness. I yawned at the correct time. I asked questions I already knew. I laughed half a second late when jokes were explained. I intentionally lost chess games to Ryan, although his strategy was mostly moving pieces with confidence and hoping history would apologize. Claire watched me more carefully. She caught me once in the library with 6 books stacked beside me. Neuroscience, machine learning, behavioral economics, aerodynamics, international trade, and stage magic. I closed the aerodynamics book before she reached the table. "You're studying?" she asked, trying to. For what? General improvement. Her eyes moved across the books. "All of these?" I picked based on the covers. She stared at me for 3 seconds. That was the first time I realized Claire was dangerous. Not because she was as intelligent as I was becoming. She was not. Nobody was. She was dangerous because she noticed emotional inconsistency. My lie was logically possible but emotionally wrong. Average students did not surround themselves with advanced books and then look annoyed by their mistakes. I changed tactics. Instead of avoiding her, I made her useful. The next day, I offered to help the Crown Challenge team with equipment. Not strategy, not design. Equipment. A harmless position carrying boxes, setting up cameras and connecting cables. Claire accepted because she needed volunteers. Soon I was inside every practice session, invisible and listening. The team was talented but predictable. They attacked each challenge directly. Build a bridge, make the strongest bridge, solve a supply crisis, move the most supplies. Win a negotiation, offer the best deal. They never asked who designed the challenge or what the judges secretly wanted. I did. During one practice, the team had to move a metal ball across a room without touching it. They built a complicated magnetic track. It failed repeatedly. I stood in the corner holding a toolbox. Claire finally looked at me. "Any ideas?" I shrugged. "The rules say we can't touch the ball. They don't say we can't move the room." Everyone went silent. The practice platform was mounted on wheels. Claire tilted the entire platform. The ball rolled into the target in 4 seconds. The coach asked how I saw it. I scratched my head. Lucky guess. Claire did not smile. After practice, she blocked the doorway. "You keep doing that. Carrying tools? Pretending." My pulse stayed steady. Pretending what? That you don't understand things. I had prepared 17 responses for this possibility. Denial was the weakest. Anger would create interest. Humor might work, but Claire did not abandon questions when amused, so I used truth, carefully measured. "I got tired of people expecting things from me," I said. "It's easier when nobody expects anything." Her expression softened. The best lies are not lies. They are truths wearing masks. Claire stepped aside. "That's a waste. Maybe. You should join the team. I'd rather help from the back." She studied me again, then nodded. I had escaped, but I had also planted an idea in her mind. I was smarter than I looked, yet afraid of pressure. A believable secret is the best cover for an unbelievable one. By day 60, I spoke conversational Spanish, French, Japanese, and Mandarin. By day 65, I could imitate accents well enough to fool language tutors over audio calls. By day 70, I wrote a market analysis program that processed public data faster than professional systems costing millions. I named it Mirror because it did not predict people. It reflected them before they understood their own faces. Mirror showed me a strange pattern. Someone else had noticed my trades. Tiny market movements appeared seconds after my positions. Not enough to copy me for profit. Enough to test whether I reacted. Whoever was watching changed timing, volume, and asset type, like tapping different sides of a glass cage to see what the animal understood. I smiled. For the first time since the numbers began, something in the world had moved before I expected it. I set a trap. I created 3 false patterns in my trading behavior. One suggested I relied on weather data. One suggested shipping activity. One suggested social media sentiment. Each pattern pointed toward a different future move. The watcher ignored 2 and followed the third. Social behavior. That meant they were studying me as a person, not merely an algorithm. The next morning, day 73, the message appeared. Intelligence increased by 1. Permanent total, 173. I watched the light fade and felt something I had not felt in months. Excitement. Someone had entered the game. I did not know his name yet, but Adrian already knew mine. Adrian arrived at school 2 days later wearing a black coat in warm weather and carrying no phone, no bag, and no expression. He was 24 and already famous in circles most students did not know existed. When corporations lost prototypes, when casinos suspected impossible cheating, when governments found patterns they could not explain, Adrian was the person they called. He had solved a museum theft by studying dust on a skylight. He had exposed a fake miracle cure from the way its creator drank water during an interview. He once found a missing cargo ship because seabirds changed direction in a weather broadcast. Grant introduced him as a special advisor for the Crown Challenge. I knew immediately that was a lie. Adrian did not look at the team. He looked at the room. His eyes paused on clocks, windows, scuffed floor tiles, and hands. He was not judging intelligence. He was mapping behavior. When he finally looked at me, his attention lasted only a fraction of a second longer than normal. That fraction was a declaration of war. He handed every student a sheet of paper containing 10 logic questions and told us it was a warm-up activity. The questions were designed to expose method rather than knowledge. One rewarded speed, one punished speed, one had no valid answer. One changed meaning depending on whether the reader assumed the instructions were honest. Mayon. The final question was blank. Most students asked what to do with it. I understood. The blank was the question. Whatever I wrote would reveal what I thought mattered when no rules were given. So I drew a crooked smiley face. Ryan saw it and copied me because Ryan approached intellectual combat the way pigeons approach traffic. Adrian collected the pages. He did not react. Then he announced that anyone who finished early could leave for lunch. Half the class rushed out. I stayed seated for 7 extra minutes, erased 2 correct answers, replaced 1 with a common mistake, and turned in the paper with everyone else. As I passed Adrian, he spoke quietly. You erased the wrong answer more carefully than the right ones. I stopped. He did not look at me. I laughed nervously. I changed my mind a lot. No, he said. You change evidence. Then he walked away. My first instinct was to eliminate his suspicion immediately. My second was to admire him. The second instinct annoyed me. That night, Mirror showed a dozen small tests across my investments. Adrian was behind them. He had connected the anonymous forecasting winner, the battery collapse, and the strange trading behavior. He did not know who I was, but he had narrowed the possibilities. I searched his public cases. Adrian disliked publicity, but other people loved talking about him. He solved problems by creating controlled uncertainty and watching who tried to control it. He rarely accused anyone directly. He made the suspect reveal what they knew. So I gave him knowledge from the wrong person. I programmed Mirror to imitate the trading style of an exhausted middle-aged analyst. It made brilliant moves at irregular hours, followed them with clumsy corrections, and reacted strongly to financial news from another time zone. At the same time, I changed my own routine. I triggered trades during class through pre-planned conditions, stopped trading at night, and deliberately lost money twice. Adrian responded by placing a rumor online that Grant's battery problem was worse than reported. The rumor was false. A greedy trader would attack. A cautious analyst would wait. Someone with private knowledge might react before the rumor spread. I did nothing. Instead, I used the rumor to buy shares in a shipping company that would benefit from the delay in battery exports. The connection was indirect enough to look accidental. Adrian noticed. Of course he noticed. The next day, he returned to school and watched Crown Challenge practice from the bleachers. He ignored Claire, who was leading. He ignored the top-ranked students. He watched me coil extension cords. I dropped one, not too clumsily. Perfect clumsiness is suspicious. The team's task was to build a machine that could climb a vertical wall and ring a bell. Their design used suction cups, motors, and enough wiring to summon a small mechanical demon. It climbed 3 feet, shuddered, and fell. The coach ordered a reset. I saw the problem instantly. The machine was not failing because it lacked grip. It was failing because the wall vibrated at a frequency that loosened the cups. A tiny change in motor timing would make the vibration work for us instead, bouncing the machine upward like a controlled insect. Claire looked toward me. I shook my head almost invisibly. Adrian was watching. Claire understood. She turned away and made the adjustment herself, pretending to discover it after checking the motor. The machine shot up the wall and struck the bell so hard it flew into the ceiling. Everyone cheered. Adrian watched Claire, then he watched me. I gave him a thumbs up like a proud equipment manager. Bro looked at one thumbs up and acted like he had discovered the second shooter. The preliminary round of the Crown Challenge began on day 80. Teams from 50 schools filled a convention center built like a glass fortress. Cameras floated on ceiling rails. Giant screens showed scores, interviews, and Grant's face from 6 angles because apparently one billionaire forehead was not enough for national television. Our team entered as an underdog. Claire had organized everyone well, but the other schools had private coaches, custom equipment, and students who had been training since childhood. One team arrived wearing matching silver jackets and carrying a robot dog that could open doors. Ryan had come as a spectator. He saw the dog, looked at our box of cables, and whispered, "We are so cooked." He was not wrong. The first challenge was navigation. Each team controlled a drone through a maze, but the pilot could not see the course. Other teammates had to describe it using a limited number of words. The obvious strategy was efficient communication. The real strategy was understanding the maze designer. I had studied the previous 7 years of Crown Challenge courses. Grant's designers loved symmetry, dramatic near misses, and camera-friendly turns. The maze was not random. It was entertainment pretending to be engineering. From the equipment station, I watched the first 2 teams crash. Their flight paths revealed 3 walls. The camera angles revealed reflections of 4 more. A shadow on the floor showed the height of an obstacle nobody else could see. I passed Claire a cable with 5 colored marks on it. We had created the code during practice. Each color represented a movement sequence. It looked like equipment labeling. Claire translated the marks into instructions. Our drone cleared the maze in 22 seconds, 9 seconds faster than the favorite. The second challenge was resource strategy. Each team controlled a miniature city after a fictional storm. We had limited power, food, vehicles, and time. Saving one district would endanger another. The scoring rules rewarded the greatest total population rescued. Every team sent vehicles toward the largest districts. I noticed the map's river level rising 1 millimeter every 30 seconds. The storm was not over. I signaled Claire to abandon the largest district. She hesitated. Cameras were on her. The crowd would think she was sacrificing thousands of simulated people. Then she trusted me. We moved every vehicle uphill, placed generators near water pumps, and waited. 90 seconds later, the river flooded the central roads. Other teams lost half their resources. Our vehicles rolled downhill through routes that had just opened and rescued nearly everyone. The scoreboard jumped. Grant leaned forward in his private viewing platform. Adrian did not move. The third challenge was negotiation. Teams had to trade colored blocks representing materials. No team had enough to complete its structure alone. Alliances formed instantly. I had no official role, so I could not speak. That was fine. People reveal more when they believe the quiet person cannot influence them. I watched posture, eye movement, and the speed at which each team counted its blocks. One team was bluffing about having blue pieces. Another had too much red but believed red would become valuable. A third team cared less about winning than preventing its rival from advancing. I passed Claire 3 numbers on a battery label. She made trades that looked terrible. We gave away useful pieces for colors nobody wanted. The commentators called it a collapse. The crowd groaned. Grant smiled. Then the final construction rule appeared. Every structure needed a foundation made from the least traded color. We owned almost all of it. Claire sold pieces back at brutal prices, completed our structure, and finished first overall. The convention center erupted. Grant came down to congratulate the team. He shook Claire's hand, praised her leadership, then noticed me behind the equipment cart. "Follow her," he said. He remembered. I lowered my head. "I'm good with cables." His smile carried no warmth. "Everyone has a level." I looked at the scoreboard above him, then back at his face. "Yes," I said, "they do." For 1 second, something in my tone reached him. His smile weakened. Adrian saw it. We advanced to the national final. That evening, Adrian sat across from me in a diner near school. He had not invited me. He had simply appeared in the booth while I was paying for coffee, as if chairs were evidence and personal boundaries were rumors. "I like this seat," he said. "There are 20 empty ones. This one has you." I sat down because refusing would look afraid. He placed a sugar packet between us. A person begins with $200. In 6 weeks he turns it into nearly $500,000. He predicts a product failure before experts. Then his behavior changes the moment someone begins watching. What is he? Lucky? Luck has no defensive behavior. Criminal? Not necessarily. Imaginary? Adrian's mouth almost smiled. You answer questions by widening them. You ask weird questions during coffee. He rotated the sugar packet so the label faced me. The trader's activity follows a student schedule. I had expected that. Then you should investigate students. I am. Outside, a bus passed. Its reflection crossed the window. In that moving reflection, I saw 2 people in Grant's security uniforms sitting in a parked car. Adrian had not come alone. Grant was watching the meeting. That changed everything. If I convinced Adrian too completely, Grant might become suspicious of Adrian. If I acted guilty, Grant would focus on me. I needed both men uncertain for different reasons. So I created a third possibility. I leaned closer and lowered my voice. What if the student isn't the traitor? Adrian's eyes sharpened. What if someone is using a school schedule to make you chase a student? I continued. A teacher, a parent, someone who knows you'll notice patterns. That idea was obvious enough that Adrian had already considered it. The useful part was not the theory. It was that I had recognized the structure of the hunt. To Adrian, it made me more suspicious. To Grant's people watching through the window, it made me look like a clever student being consulted. I stood. I need to get home. Adrian did not stop me. Ethan. I turned. The blank question on the test, he said. Why a smiley face? Because blank paper looked sad. He stared at me. I smiled exactly like the drawing and left. By day 90, my total reached 190. The world began slowing down. Not literally. Raindrops did not freeze in the air, and I could not dodge bullets by doing algebra. But decisions unfolded before people finished making them. I heard the first 3 words of a sentence and mapped the likely endings. I saw a hand move toward a pocket and knew whether it wanted a phone, keys, or reassurance. Crowds became weather systems. Markets became nervous animals. Machines became arguments made of metal. I also became bored. That was dangerous. Power without resistance turns inward. I could feel contempt growing in me, cold and clean. Teachers repeated explanations I had surpassed. Experts spoke with confidence about patterns they could not see. Grant built an empire by being slightly faster than slow people, and believed speed made him a god. I did not want applause anymore. I wanted control, not the childish control of shouting orders. Real control is invisible. It is arranging choices so everyone walks toward your result while believing they chose the path. I expanded Mirror. It began scanning public shipping feeds, weather models, entertainment trends, product reviews, satellite images, and millions of small human signals. I could not process the entire world, but I did not need to. The world repeated itself. Fear in one market resembled fear in another. Vanity in a boardroom resembled vanity in a classroom. Scale changed. People did not. Within 3 weeks, 500,000 became 8 million. I did not buy a sports car. That was what insecure people did when money arrived before personality. I bought a building. It was an unfinished 40-story tower at the edge of downtown, abandoned after the developer collapsed. Its windows were dark. Its top floors were exposed to the sky. Everyone saw a failure made of steel. I saw a brain waiting for electricity, using a company managed almost entirely by software and professional agents who never met me. I acquired the tower at auction. I renamed nothing. I put no logo on it. Construction crews returned at night and installed servers, laboratories, hidden elevators, drone platforms, and a glass room at the top where I could see the entire city. Ryan still believed I saved lunch money in a jar. Claire believed I was a frightened genius helping her team from the shadows. Grant believed the mysterious traitor was probably an older professional. Adrian believed I was involved, but could not prove how. They were all wrong. I was not helping from the shadows. I was building a throne inside them. On day 97, I stood on the unfinished roof while wind tore at my coat. Below me, the city glowed in grids and veins. My tower was not complete, my fortune was small by billionaire standards, and graduation was still months away. Then the morning message replayed in my mind. 1 point every day. Tomorrow I would be smarter. The day after that, smarter again. Grant's empire had taken 15 years to build. At my current rate, I would understand all of it before spring break. Bro had 15 years of grind and I was about to speedrun his bloodline during senior semester. But before I could begin, Mirror issued an alert. A market account I had never seen purchased exactly 1 share in each of 97 companies. The companies appeared unrelated. Airlines, food producers, robotics firms, movie studios, mining operations. 97 companies. Day 97. The total price of the purchase matched the cost of my first forecasting entry down to the cent. Adrian had found the tower, and he had just knocked on the door without touching it. I did not sleep that night, not because I was afraid Adrian had found my headquarters. Fear is useful only when it becomes preparation. I stayed awake because his message contained more than a threat. He had discovered the tower, yet he had not exposed it to Grant. If Grant knew, security teams would already be surrounding the building. News helicopters would circle the roof. Every financial agency on the planet would suddenly become fascinated by construction permits and electricity usage. Instead, Adrian had sent a private signal only I would understand. He wanted the game to continue. That made him more dangerous than Grant. Grant wanted power. Power makes people impatient. Adrian wanted truth. Truth can wait forever. I answered before dawn. Mirror purchased 1 share in 98 companies, but the companies were not random. Their ticker symbols formed a sentence when arranged by the dates they were founded. Nice try. Then I sold them all at 6:17, the exact minute my intelligence increased. It was reckless. It revealed that the number 97 mattered, and that time mattered, but it also created dozens of wrong explanations. Maybe I had completed a 97-day project. Maybe I was 97 years old. Maybe the tower had 97 investors. Maybe 6:17 was a birth time, a train schedule, or the moment I enjoyed being dramatic. The smartest move is not always hiding information. Sometimes it is burying one truth beneath a mountain of attractive lies. At 6:40, Adrian entered the tower. I watched through cameras from my bedroom. He had bypassed no lock and broken no window. The front door opened for him because I had instructed it to. Denying entry would prove I cared what he saw. The lobby was empty except for a white line painted across the floor. Adrian followed it to an elevator. The elevator took him to the 23rd floor, where one room had been completed to look like the office of a secretive investment research group. Screens displayed fake employee schedules. Coffee steamed in unattended cups. Coats hung on chairs. Recorded footsteps moved through distant corridors. A printer released pages every few minutes. The whole floor breathed like an occupied machine. Adrian touched nothing. A screen turned on. A generated face appeared, older and calm, built from features that matched no real person. "Welcome," the face said through a voice assembled from hundreds of public recordings. Adrian looked at the camera above the screen. Ethan chose the smile. My fingers stopped over the keyboard. The generated face smiled. Adrian continued. "It resembles the drawing on his test." I changed the smile remotely. "Interesting theory," the voice said. "The response delay is 14 milliseconds longer when I mention him." I had accounted for network delay, eye tracking, breathing patterns, and audio latency. I had not accounted for Adrian comparing sentence timing to specific words, so I removed the delay entirely. The face began speaking before Adrian finished his next question. "You assume a single operator," it said. "That is your weakness." Adrian tilted his head. No, my weakness is that I enjoy being right. Then enjoy this. Every screen on the floor changed at once. They showed live images from 20 cities, traffic jams, ports, shopping centers, weather stations, and markets opening around the world. Mirror highlighted tiny patterns connecting them. An increase in umbrella sales predicted train delays. A celebrity rumor shifted demand for a metal used in phone cameras. A sports victory changed restaurant traffic, which changed delivery fuel purchases, which moved a regional energy price. I gave Adrian a glimpse of the machine without showing the mind inside it. He watched silently. The generated face said, "The world is not random. It is merely larger than most attention spans." Adrian looked directly into the camera. That sounds like something an 18-year-old would say after reading one philosophy book. I nearly laughed. Bro entered a secret skyscraper full of predictive supercomputers and still found time to roast the owner's fake deep phase. Then Adrian placed a folded piece of paper on the desk and left. I sent a drone to retrieve it after the elevator reached the ground. The paper contained one sentence. "You are improving too quickly." That was the first observation that came close to the truth. I burned the note. The national final of the Crown Challenge took place 12 days later in a stadium filled with 40,000 people. By then, my total was 110 points above where I began. I had reached 210. Standard intelligence tests no longer measured anything useful. Their hardest questions looked like warm-up puzzles. I needed to invent challenges just to feel resistance. Grant provided one. The stadium floor held a miniature city built from steel towers, roads, water tanks, power lines, and moving vehicles. Each school controlled construction drones and rescue machines from a glass command booth. The scenario was simple. An earthquake would strike the model city, and teams had to protect as many zones as possible. Simple was a lie. I saw extra cables beneath the western tower. The cameras around our booth had narrower lenses than the others. Grant's security people watched me instead of Claire. Adrian sat alone near the judges, staring at the stadium roof. Grant had designed the final to force my hand. The countdown began. Claire led the team. I stood behind her with the equipment crew. Ryan sat in the audience holding a sign with my name misspelled even though he had known me for 6 years. The simulated earthquake started. Buildings shook, roads split, water surged through transparent pipes. Teams sent drones racing toward the highest value zones. I ignored the model. The western tower's support cable was vibrating at the wrong frequency. It was not part of the game. A real structural pin had failed inside the stadium machinery. In less than 2 minutes, a 20-ton lighting rig would tilt. The automatic safety system should stop it, but the safety indicator was dark. Sabotage or accident did not matter. 40,000 people sat beneath it. I could remain hidden and risk lives, or reveal enough to save them. That was Grant's trap. He expected me to whisper instructions to Claire. Instead, I stepped to the main console. The coach tried to stop me. I told him the West rig was failing. He looked up, saw nothing, and told me to return to my station. 90 seconds. I entered the maintenance display. The stadium system blocked outside control, but our construction drones used the same emergency frequency as the model's safety sensors. I redirected 12 drones, flew them beneath the rig, and attached their magnetic lifting arms to 3 support cables. The audience thought it was part of the competition. Grant stood. Adrian smiled. 60 seconds. The drones were too weak to hold the rig. I did not need them to hold it. I needed them to change how it fell. I ordered Claire to evacuate the western model zone. She heard my tone and obeyed without asking. Our score collapsed as virtual citizens were abandoned. 30 seconds. I swung the model city's tallest crane toward the edge of the arena. The commentators shouted that I had ruined our strategy. The crowd booed. Then the real lighting rig snapped. Metal screamed above the stadium. The drones pulled 3 support cables sideways. The falling rig rotated, struck the model crane, slid down its reinforced arm, and crashed into the empty western zone we had evacuated. The impact destroyed a quarter of the miniature city. No one in the audience was hurt. For 3 full seconds, 40,000 people made no sound. Then the stadium exploded into panic and applause at the same time. Cameras turned toward me. I had calculated the fall using cable tension, drone thrust, metal fatigue, and the crane's load capacity in under 20 seconds. That was not something an average equipment volunteer could do. So I gave the public a simpler story. I grabbed Claire's shoulder and pointed at her. "She saw it first," I shouted. Claire's eyes widened. I spoke faster, feeding her the explanation in fragments. She understood immediately. When reporters rushed the booth, Claire described how the team had noticed the vibration during setup and prepared an emergency response. I acted shaken. The coach, desperate to avoid admitting he had ignored me, agreed with her version. Grant knew it was false. Adrian knew it was false. Claire knew exactly what I had done. The audience did not. The final resumed after a safety delay. Our model city was destroyed, our score was last, and half our drones were damaged. Grant expected us to lose. I was offended. The rules awarded points for population, infrastructure, and recovery speed. They did not require the original city to survive. While other teams repaired damaged roads, I had Claire dismantle everything we had left. Towers, bridges, vehicles, pipes. Commentators called it surrender. We flattened the remaining structures into platforms, connected the water tanks into counterweights, and used the surviving drones to lift entire neighborhoods onto mobile bases. When the second simulated earthquake struck, other cities broke again. Ours moved. We had transformed the model into a crawling city. 40,000 people stood and screamed as steel districts rolled across the arena on improvised tracks, avoiding cracks and carrying every surviving citizen marker to safety. The machine looked like a mechanical continent escaping the planet. We rose from last place to first in 90 seconds. Grant had built a competition. I had made an anime finale out of municipal planning. At the awards ceremony, Claire lifted the trophy. The team received $10 million for the school. Grant shook every hand, but when he reached me, he did not let go. "You hid behind her," he said quietly. "I carried cables. You saved the stadium. Lucky guess. You turned a city into a vehicle. Claire's idea." Grant's grip tightened. "Come work for me." The cameras were close, so he kept smiling. I smiled too. I'm still figuring things out. His eyes hardened. He remembered saying those words to me in the classroom. I had returned them gift-wrapped. After the ceremony, Claire found me beneath the stadium where equipment trucks were loading. She did not ask whether I had saved everyone. She already knew. "How smart are you?" she asked. I leaned against a crate, smart enough to be afraid of that question. "That is not an answer. It's the only one I can give." Claire stepped closer. "You used me." "Yes." The truth surprised her more than denial would have. I continued before she could speak. "I also trusted you. I knew you could understand my instructions, control the team, and keep people calm. Both things can be true." Her anger did not vanish. It became more complicated, which was what I needed. "You made the whole country think the rescue was mine. You wanted to build safer cities. Now people will listen to you." "That doesn't make it right." "No, it makes it effective." For a moment, I saw myself reflected in her eyes. Not a shy student, not an average kid, but something colder. Then Ryan appeared carrying a giant foam crown stolen from the audience section. "We won!" he yelled, completely unaware that our friendship group was having a moral collapse beside a forklift. Claire walked away. Ryan placed the foam crown on my head. Why does she look mad? I saved 40,000 people and manipulated her reputation. He nodded slowly. So, normal competition drama. Ryan had the survival instincts of a man who would pet a tiger because it looked lonely. Grant did not expose me after the final. He did something smarter. He invited the winning team to a celebration aboard his yacht. The vessel was a floating palace with 2 pools, a helicopter deck, a glass elevator, and a dining room large enough to make hunger feel poor. Billionaires, investors, athletes, and media personalities wandered through the decks beneath lights that made everyone look slightly more expensive. Grant wanted me surrounded by wealth. He wanted to show me the world I could enter if I obeyed him. He did not understand that I had already purchased the yacht anchored beside his. Mine was larger. I had bought it 3 days earlier through a remote auction after Mirror predicted which bidders would drop out and when. I changed the exterior lighting, removed the name, and parked it within view of Grant's main deck. Ryan spent 10 minutes taking pictures of it. Imagine owning that. I try not to. Claire heard me and gave me a suspicious look. During dinner, Grant gathered several wealthy guests around a strategy table. The game used black and white stones placed across a map of the world. Players gained territory by predicting one another's moves. Grant had never lost publicly. He invited Claire to play. Then he looked at me. "You can carry the stones." Laughter moved around the table. I obeyed. For the first 6 rounds, Grant dominated. He trapped one player in South America, forced another out of Asia, and convinced Claire to defend territory he never intended to attack. I placed stones wherever he ordered, keeping my expression blank. Then Grant asked whether I had any advice for Claire. He wanted to humiliate me again. I looked at the board. She should surrender everything. More laughter. Claire looked at me once, then removed nearly all her stones. The table went quiet. Grant attacked the empty regions. Other players rushed to claim abandoned territory. Their pieces spread across the board, blocking one another. Claire kept only 3 islands and a narrow strip along the northern edge. Grant smiled. And now? I placed 1 white stone on an ocean route. Claire's 3 islands connected through the shipping lanes. Every other player had overexpanded. Under the game's supply rules, their territories became isolated. In one move, Claire controlled the only network linking the board. She won. Grant stared at the stones. The wealthy guests began asking me questions. I answered badly on purpose, but the damage was done. They had seen the move. Adrian stood on the upper deck watching through the glass. Grant leaned close. "You think embarrassing me makes you powerful?" "No," I said. "Power makes embarrassing you easy." His smile disappeared. At that exact moment, the yacht beside us illuminated from bow to stern. Hundreds of white lights traced its larger shape. Music rolled across the water. A drone display formed a crown above its helipad, then shattered the crown into falling sparks. Every guest turned to stare. Grant demanded to know who owned it. A crew member approached me and held out a silver keycard. "Your helicopter is ready, Ethan." Silence hit the deck harder than the stadium rig. Ryan's mouth opened. Claire closed her eyes like she had just solved a terrible equation. Grant looked from me to the larger yacht. I took the card. "I told you," I said. "I'm still figuring things out." Then I walked across the connecting launch, boarded my own yacht, and left his party without another word. Bro invited me to flex his money and got financially ratioed by a high schooler in formal shoes. A helicopter lifted from my deck. As we rose above the harbor, Grant's yacht shrank beneath us. For the first time, I let the cameras capture my face clearly. The next morning, every news program wanted to know how an average student owned a vessel worth hundreds of millions. Grant wanted the answer. Claire demanded the answer. Ryan sent me 47 messages, 30 of which were just the word yacht followed by question marks, and Adrian sent only 1. Now we can stop pretending. Pretending ended badly for everyone except me. By sunrise, camera crews surrounded my house. Reporters stood on the sidewalk explaining my own life to the country with the confidence of people who had learned my name 6 hours earlier. They called me the mystery student investor, the yacht genius, the teenage tycoon, and in one especially desperate headline, the boy who bought the ocean. I left through the front door wearing my school backpack. Questions struck from every direction. How had I made the money? Was the yacht really mine? Did I work for Grant? Was I a criminal? Was I secretly royalty? One reporter asked whether I had a girlfriend while another shouted about tax policy, proving civilization had reached its intellectual peak. I stopped at the curb. "I won a forecasting competition," I said. "Then I made investments based on public information. Some succeeded." "How many?" "Enough. How much are you worth?" "I haven't checked this morning." That answer became the clip replayed everywhere. I had checked. My holdings were worth just over $900 million. By lunch, they crossed $1 billion. I became a billionaire while sitting in history class pretending to struggle with a worksheet about the Industrial Revolution. The teacher kept glancing at me as if wealth had transformed me into a wild animal that might attack the projector. Students who had ignored me for years suddenly needed advice. People offered friendship, business ideas, party invitations, and homemade cookies. One student claimed we had always been close because I once loaned him an eraser. They started glazing after one yacht like Bro had personally invented water. Ryan entered class wearing sunglasses and announced that he was now my head of security. "You are not," I told him. He pointed at the door. "Nobody got past me." "You arrived after everyone." "Exactly. Secured." Claire did not join the crowd. She waited until the room emptied, then placed her phone on my desk. The screen showed a photograph of my tower. "I followed the construction company," she said. I looked up. "You own that too?" "Yes." "How much have you been hiding?" "Most of it." Her jaw tightened. "Why reveal the yacht?" "Because Grant needed to understand that I was not available for purchase." "You spent hundreds of millions to make a point?" "The yacht was already a good asset. That sentence makes me want to throw you through a window." I almost smiled. Claire's anger was cleaner than everyone else's admiration. She still spoke to me like I was human. "I need you," I said. The words stopped her. Not because they were romantic. They were not. I had calculated 16 ways to make her loyal, and rejected all of them. Loyalty manufactured through pressure breaks under greater pressure. Claire would stay only if she believed staying gave her the power to stop me from becoming something worse. "You need someone who tells you no," she said. "Yes, that might be the first honest thing you've said." "It is not." She stared, then laughed despite herself. Claire agreed to help manage the public side of my growing company, but only after making one rule: no using her as a shield without warning. I agreed because rules are easiest to accept when you know exactly when you will break them. Ryan demanded a job too. I put him in charge of testing whether ordinary people could understand our products. This sounded insulting until he realized it meant smashing prototypes, pressing unlabeled buttons, and asking questions engineers were too embarrassed to ask. He became disturbingly useful. My company had no grand mission statement. I did not need polished words about changing the future. I built things. A battery that charged in 4 minutes without catching fire. A medical scanner the size of a phone. A construction material lighter than aluminum and stronger than steel. A translation device that handled tone, sarcasm, and regional slang instead of turning every sentence into the verbal equivalent of wet cardboard. I did not invent them from nothing. I absorbed decades of research, found connections between fields, and made teams of experts move at a speed that frightened them. I would enter a laboratory, ask 6 questions, and leave behind 3 months of work. Every morning, another point arrived. At 220, I could learn a new programming language during breakfast. At 230, I could hold separate technical conversations in both ears while reading financial reports. At 240, I began seeing social events as branching structures. I knew which joke would relax a room, which silence would create pressure, and which compliment would turn an enemy into a temporary ally. I used that ability everywhere. When a group of investors tried to corner me during a televised conference, I answered each question with a fact that made another investor nervous. Within 10 minutes, they stopped attacking me and started arguing with one another. When 3 major companies refused to sell me factory space, I announced a new manufacturing method that made their factories less valuable. Their stock prices dropped. They called back before dinner. When a city rejected my plan to build a research campus, I held a public science festival across the river. Hundreds of thousands attended. The city that rejected me watched hotels, restaurants, and traffic flow in the opposite direction. They invited me back the next morning. I did not beg doors to open. I made walls feel lonely. Grant attacked through public opinion. He appeared on television and praised my remarkable luck, emphasizing the word luck until it sounded like a disease. He suggested young people should not confuse sudden wealth with experience. He warned that my products were untested, my company was unstable, and my public image hid unknown influences. He never accused me directly. Direct attacks create sympathy. Grant preferred fog. I answered with sunlight. I announced a live event in my unfinished tower. No edited presentation, no hidden laboratory. I would demonstrate every major invention before engineers, doctors, journalists, and the public. If any demonstration failed, I would donate $100 million to schools. Grant accepted an invitation and arrived with Adrian. The tower's top floor had become a circular glass arena overlooking the city. Hundreds of guests filled the seats. Millions watched online. Ryan stood beside a table of prototypes wearing a lab coat over a graphic t-shirt. Claire managed the event with the expression of someone supervising a volcano. The first demonstration succeeded. The battery charged an electric car in 4 minutes. The medical scanner identified hidden fractures in volunteers. The translation device interpreted a rapid conversation across 6 languages, including sarcasm so sharp that one engineer asked whether the machine had become personally offended. And then Grant activated his trap. Every prototype failed at once. Screens went black. The battery stopped charging. The scanner froze. The translation device began repeating random syllables. The audience murmured. News commentators smelled blood from 3 networks away. I looked toward the ceiling. A narrow band signal was interfering with our wireless systems. Grant's people had hidden transmitters in several camera units. The signal changed frequency every second, using a pattern generated by an artificial intelligence. Grant stood in the front row, concerned enough for television and delighted enough for me. Claire whispered, "Can you fix it?" "Yes." "How long?" I checked the signal once. Already did. Instead of fighting the interference, I let it control the devices. Then I changed what control meant. The charging station interpreted every hostile pulse as an instruction to increase efficiency. The scanner used the signal changes as additional imaging data. The translation device mapped the rhythm into language probabilities. The prototypes restarted. Not only did they worked faster. Grant's sabotage had become an upgrade. I walked to the center of the arena. "Thank you for the signal boost." The audience laughed. Grant did not. Adrian looked at the camera units, then at me. He understood instantly. I continued the demonstration by asking Ryan to smash the battery with a hammer. He had been waiting for this moment his entire life. He swung so hard the hammer bounced out of his hands, crossed the stage, and nearly donated $100 million to a journalist's skull. The battery remained intact. Bro got one job and almost turned a product launch into a true crime documentary. The event became a global sensation. Orders flooded in. My company's value tripled in 2 days. Grant responded by unveiling his own artificial intelligence, a system he called the most advanced strategic engine ever built. It had consumed every public move I had made, every interview, every investment pattern, every competition decision, and every product launch. Grant claimed it could predict my choices with 98% accuracy. He challenged me to a televised strategy match. The game would simulate a global crisis. We would control nations, resources, industries, and public morale. Grant's AI would advise him. I would play alone. I accepted. Adrian visited the tower the night before the match. This time I met him in person. We stood in the glass room at the top, city lights below us. He walked around a table covered in models and equations. "You are not alone," he said. "Ryan does not count as artificial intelligence. I meant the source of your improvement." I kept my face still. Adrian placed 3 copies of my schoolwork on the table, one from the start of the year, one from a month later, one recent. "Your handwriting changes as your processing speed changes," he said. "Your deliberate mistakes also change. At first they were simple. Later you simulated the misconceptions that would produce them. You are getting better at pretending to be worse. That proves I practice deception. It proves progression. Everyone progresses, not at a constant accelerating effect." He pointed to dates. "Your decisions improve in steps. You perform better after morning, not gradually through the day. The shift occurs near 6:17. My pulse moved once, hard. Adrian saw it. I smiled. "You built a theory around my alarm clock?" "I built it around 97 purchases sold at 6:17. "That was bait." "Yes, and you bit because you wanted me to know I was close. For the first time he had me. Not proof, never proof, but truth can exist before evidence." Adrian leaned over the table. "How much smarter will you be tomorrow?" I looked through the glass at the city. 1 point. Silence filled the room. I had told him. Why? Because denying him forever would make him Grant's weapon. Giving him one truth might make him mine. "Every day?" he asked. "Yes." "Permanent?" "Yes." "Does it stop?" "I don't know." Adrian's eyes moved through calculations I could almost see. "At the end of a year, I will be 365 points above where I began." He walked to the window. Most people would have asked how it happened. Adrian asked the only question that mattered. "What do you plan to become?" I stood beside him. Necessary. His reflection turned toward mine. "That is what dictators call themselves before the statues. Dictators demand obedience. I prefer people making the correct choice. Defined by you. Defined by outcomes." Adrian looked almost disappointed. "You are intelligent enough to understand why that is dangerous. I am intelligent enough to understand why danger is sometimes useful." We stood there like 2 knives deciding which one was sharper. Then he said, Grant sabotaged your demonstration. I know. He will sabotage the match. I know. His AI is better than he claims. I hope so. Adrian left without promising silence. I knew he would keep the secret for now. Not because he trusted me. Because he needed to see what I did with tomorrow. The strategy match began at noon inside a massive broadcast studio. Grant sat behind a curved console linked to his AI. I sat across from him with no computer assistance beyond the game interface. The simulated crisis began with a global food shortage, cyber attacks, failing power grids, and unrest across 12 regions. Grant's AI recommended efficient responses. It moved resources before shortages appeared, predicted refugee flows, and manipulated public morale with surgical precision. I lost ground immediately. Commentators called Grant's machine unbeatable. My approval ratings fell. My simulated economy contracted. 3 regions abandoned my alliance. Grant smiled across the stage. Luck has limits. He was right. So I stopped using luck. I had spent the morning studying his AI's predictions. A system trained on my public behavior expected me to choose the smartest visible option. It expected elegant deception, indirect attacks, and calculated sacrifice. I handed Ryan a bag of cheese crackers. He was sitting behind me as an assistant. "Pick one," I said. He reached into the bag. Some crackers were whole, some were broken. I had assigned decisions to shapes. Ryan selected a cracker shaped like a bent boot. I abandoned 3 profitable regions and moved every available cargo ship toward an empty ocean zone. Grant's AI paused. The audience laughed. Ryan picked another cracker. I shut down my strongest power plant, gave resources to a hostile region, and broadcast a speech praising my own failure. The AI's prediction rate dropped from 98% to 61%. Grant stared at Ryan. What is he doing? Ryan ate the evidence. Randomness alone would not beat the AI. Randomness created openings. I used those openings to make moves the system had rejected as irrational. The empty ocean zone became the safest shipping route after a storm changed direction. The hostile region became dependent on my aid. The closed power plant exposed hidden sabotage before it spread. My public admission of failure increased trust because the AI had assumed leaders always protected approval. I combined superhuman calculation with snack-based chaos. The AI began contradicting itself. Each attempt to model Ryan's choices polluted its model of mine. Grant relied on the machine more heavily as it became less reliable. With 11 minutes left, I controlled fewer regions but all major supply routes. Grant controlled most territory but could not feed it. I offered him one final alliance. He refused because the AI predicted I was bluffing. I was not. His simulated nations collapsed in sequence. Mine absorbed them without firing a shot. The match ended with my side controlling the entire board. The audience roared. Grant looked at the cracker bag like it had murdered his ancestors. Rent was due, so Ryan accidentally outperformed a $1 billion AI with processed cheese. I stood and shook Grant's hand for the cameras. He leaned close. "You humiliated me twice." "3 times, I said. "You forgot the battery." His fingers trembled. That was the moment Grant stopped wanting to recruit me. He wanted to destroy me. 2 days later, my private jet lost both engines over the ocean. The first engine died with a sound like the sky tearing cloth. The second died 8 seconds later. We were 41,000 feet above open water, 300 miles from land, moving fast enough that panic had not yet caught up with physics. Claire sat across from me in the cabin. Ryan was asleep with his mouth open beneath a silk blanket he had stolen from the yacht. Adrian stood near the window because he disliked seatbelts almost as much as he disliked unanswered questions. The jet tilted. Warning lights flashed. The pilots fought the controls. Cabin pressure began dropping, and oxygen masks fell from the ceiling. Ryan woke, saw the masks, and said, "Is this the snack one, or the death one?" "The death one," Claire answered. He put it on very quickly. I closed my eyes for 1 second, not to pray, to calculate altitude, airspeed, wind direction, aircraft weight, ocean temperature, distance to shipping lanes, remaining electrical power, glide ratio, wave height. Every variable entered my mind and arranged itself. The engines had not failed naturally. Fuel pressure vanished in both systems at the same moment, but the backup pumps were reporting normal operation. The sensors were lying. Someone had altered the maintenance software before takeoff. Grant had moved from public games to murder while keeping enough distance to call it tragedy. I walked toward the cockpit. A crew member tried to stop me. Adrian said, "Let him through." The pilots were attempting an emergency restart. It would not work. The software would shut the engines down again even if fuel reached them. "How long can we glide?" I asked. The lead pilot gave a number based on standard conditions. "Wrong," I said. "We have a tailwind at altitude but a crosswind below 12,000 feet. Hold this heading for 7 minutes, then turn 19 degrees south." He stared at me. "Do it." Something in my voice made him obey. I called my operations center through the emergency satellite link. My yacht was 180 miles southeast, returning from the harbor. Too far for a normal landing. This would not be normal. I ordered the yacht to accelerate north at maximum speed and clear its upper deck. Every helicopter, railing, antenna, and decorative structure had to move or break away. I ordered 2 support ships to deploy inflatable rescue platforms in a line behind it. Then I told engineers at the tower to transmit a clean control package to the jet. The malicious software blocked it. Adrian leaned over the cockpit console. "Can you bypass the system?" "Yes." "How?" "By making it think we already crashed." I fed the aircraft false impact data. The corrupted program concluded its mission was complete and stopped interfering. The engines still would not restart because fuel flow had been physically interrupted, but flight controls returned. We descended through 30,000 feet. The ocean became visible, dark and endless. Claire entered the cockpit. "There is no runway." "There will be." "On the yacht?" "Yes. The jet is longer than the deck, only while it has wings." She stared at me. I explained the plan. The aircraft's outer wing sections were designed to shear away under extreme controlled stress to protect the cabin during certain impacts. If I touched down at an angle between 2 deck structures, the wings would break along predictable lines. The fuselage would slide across the yacht, hit a row of emergency barriers, then continue onto the inflatable platforms behind it. It was not a landing. It was a planned disassembly at 200 miles per hour. Claire looked at the ocean, then at me. "What are the chances? For everyone else?" "Yes. Terrible. For you?" I checked the numbers again. "Acceptable." Ryan appeared behind her, still wearing the oxygen mask even though cabin pressure had stabilized. I hate that answer. Bro bought his first private jet and immediately unlocked the detachable wings package. At 18,000 feet, we saw the yacht. It cut through the water below, white wake stretching behind it. The upper deck had been stripped bare. Crew members had evacuated into lower reinforced sections. Rescue platforms unfolded across the sea like giant orange stepping stones. Millions of people were about to watch because Ryan had accidentally activated a live broadcast while trying to call his mother. His phone camera pointed at the cockpit. Claire noticed the viewer count and nearly dropped it. "Turn it off," she said. I stopped her. If we survived, the world needed to see it. Grant had tried to create an accident. I would turn it into an advertisement. At 8,000 feet, the yacht looked impossibly small. At 4,000, the crosswind hit. The jet rolled left. The pilot corrected. I told him not to fight the next gust. We used it to line up with the deck. At 2,000, one support platform broke loose. I recalculated. At 1,000, a wave lifted the yacht higher than predicted. I recalculated again. At 500 feet, the lead pilot's hands began shaking. I took the controls. The ocean rushed upward. The deck filled the windshield. Warning systems screamed that terrain was ahead, which was technically correct but emotionally unhelpful. I lowered the jet toward the yacht at an angle no training manual would approve. The right wheel struck first. The aircraft slammed sideways. Both outer wings hit reinforced posts and tore away exactly where I expected. Fuel mist burst into the air, but emergency foam cannons fired before it ignited. The shortened fuselage skidded across the deck, ripped through 3 barriers, crossed the stern and landed on the first inflatable platform. The platform collapsed. Momentum carried us onto the second, then the third. The nose stopped 12 feet above the water. Silence filled the broken cabin. Ryan slowly removed his oxygen mask. "Do we still get the in-flight meal?" The live broadcast reached 80 million viewers before Claire shut it off. Within an hour, the clip had been translated into every major language. People watched me calculate the approach, order the wing separation, and land a private jet on my own moving yacht. Engineers argued it was impossible while replaying footage of it happening. My company received 6 million job applications. Orders for our aircraft safety technology rose by 8,000%, even though we did not sell aircraft safety technology yet. So I invented it before breakfast. The next morning, day 137, the blue message appeared while I slept in a cabin surrounded by pieces of my former jet. Intelligence increased by 1. Permanent total, 237. I opened my eyes and designed a better aircraft. By the end of the week, I had purchased a struggling aviation manufacturer, replaced its development schedule, and revealed a private jet with a detachable passenger capsule, autonomous emergency glide system, and engines protected from the exact sabotage used against me. I ordered 12. 1 was enough. 12 made the point visible from space. Grant denied involvement in the crash. He sent flowers, offered condolences, and called my survival inspiring. I sent the flowers back in a vase made from melted pieces of the failed engine. No note. He understood. The public expected me to accuse him. Adrian expected me to gather proof. Claire expected me to increase security. I did all 3, but not in the order anyone saw. First, I made myself harder to kill. My tower gained independent power, water, communications, and defense systems. My vehicles no longer followed predictable routes. Drones mapped every location before I entered. Mirror monitored maintenance activity, supply changes, and human behavior around my facilities. Ryan complained that his bathroom had more sensors than a moon landing. Second, I expanded so quickly that no single attack could matter. I bought empty buildings in 12 cities and turned them into laboratories. I acquired factories near ports, farms near data centers, and warehouses beneath flight paths. I purchased 2 more yachts, not because I needed them, but because mobile research bases are useful, and because Grant hated seeing them. I bought a small island and covered half of it with solar glass. I bought a mountain observatory and converted it into a communications hub. I bought an old sports arena and filled it with robots that could assemble emergency shelters in minutes. My wealth passed 10 billion, then 20. Money became less like treasure and more like electricity. I moved it where I needed action. The flashy purchases kept the public distracted. News programs debated the number of jets while my laboratories redesigned medicine. Social media tracked my yachts while mirror-mapped power grids. Everyone watched the crown. Nobody watched the hands building the kingdom. Claire watched. She entered my tower one evening and found a wall displaying cities around the world. Each city had risk scores for food, energy, weather, unrest, and infrastructure failure. You are monitoring governments, she said. I am monitoring consequences. You do not have authority to do this. Storms do not ask for authority. Neither do tyrants. I turned from the display. Grant tried to kill us. That does not make every limit imaginary. No, it makes limits expensive. Claire pointed at a city glowing red on the map. A massive hurricane was approaching its coast. Forecasts predicted severe damage, but local leaders had delayed evacuation because earlier storms had weakened unexpectedly. What are you going to do? She asked. Nothing yet. People could die. If I move too early, authorities reject help, roads clog, and panic causes more damage. If I move too late, shelters fail. She studied me. So this is another game? No. I looked at the model. The hurricane's eye had shifted 6 miles north. Ocean heat, pressure gradients, and high-altitude wind formed a pattern no official forecast had weighted correctly. It is a clock. I waited 3 hours. Then I moved everything. My cargo aircraft landed at regional airports before officials understood why. Construction robots assembled shelters on high ground. My yachts entered nearby ports carrying generators, water systems, medical scanners, and autonomous rescue boats. Drones placed communication towers along evacuation routes. Translation devices broadcast instructions in every local language. Grant owned several power plants in the storm zone. Minutes before landfall, they shut down. He claimed it was a safety measure. Mirrors showed coordinated failures. Backup systems had been disabled remotely. Grant wanted the crisis to become my failure. He expected the public to see my technology arrive and then watch the region go dark. I had expected him to expect that. The buildings I purchased weeks earlier were not laboratories. They were batteries. Every wall panel, floor layer, and window stored power. When Grant's plants failed, my buildings disconnected from the grid and began feeding electricity outward. My electric vehicles formed mobile power lines. The yachts became floating stations. Even the giant screens on my sports arena shut down and redirected energy across emergency links. The city lights flickered once, then they brightened. Grant's sabotage failed so completely that most people never knew it happened. The hurricane made landfall at midnight. Winds tore roofs away, water covered highways. Rescue teams could not reach several neighborhoods, so I sent autonomous boats guided by drone lights. A hospital's lower level flooded, so construction robots cut through an upper wall and built a bridge to the parking structure. A communications tower collapsed, so one of my jets circled above the city, acting as a flying network hub for 11 hours. I directed it all from the glass room. Thousands of live feeds surrounded me. I spoke to engineers, pilots, doctors, rescue leaders, and machine systems at once. My mind divided without weakening. One part tracked storm movement, one part allocated power, one part predicted panic, one part watched Grant. At 3:12 in the morning, a dam sensor failed. At 3:13, I ordered evacuation of a district officials believed was safe. At 3:19, the dam broke. The district was already empty. By sunrise, the hurricane had passed. Damage was enormous, but deaths were a fraction of predictions. The public called it a miracle. I called it 6 days of preparation and one billionaire behaving exactly as expected. Grant's power companies lost their licenses in the region after investigators found the disabled backups. I did not create the evidence. I simply ensured cameras were looking in the correct direction when it appeared. Adrian visited the emergency command center after the storm. He walked through exhausted teams and walls of data. You saved them. Yes. You also used the disaster to take control of the regional grid. For 9 hours. And afterward, I gave control back. Why? I understood the test. Adrian was not asking about electricity. He wanted to know whether I could release power after holding it. Because keeping it would make the next city resist me, I said. His expression hardened. Not because it was right? Right and effective are not enemies. But when they become enemies, I choose the result with fewer graves. Adrian looked around at the people who were alive because of me. He could not approve of my methods. He could not condemn the outcome. That contradiction was my strongest shield. The storm changed my public image. I was no longer merely the student who owned a yacht. I was the person who had saved a city after experts failed to agree. World leaders requested meetings. Universities offered honorary degrees before I had earned a normal one. Companies asked to partner with me. Billionaires who had laughed at Grant's yacht party now competed for invitations to my tower. I invited 12 of them at once. They arrived expecting investment opportunities. I gave them homework. Each received a tablet showing a crisis inside an industry they controlled. A food shortage, a medicine bottleneck, a transportation collapse, a housing emergency. They had 1 hour to propose solutions using their resources. They assumed I wanted advice. I wanted measurement. Some protected profit, some protected reputation. 2 tried to copy one another. One spent 40 minutes asking assistants what answer I preferred. Only one proposed sacrificing short-term wealth to solve the problem, and even that person added a camera strategy. At the end, I displayed my solutions. Every crisis could be reduced dramatically by connecting resources the billionaires already owned but refused to share. Their empires were not efficient. They were isolated kingdoms wasting power because cooperation felt like weakness. I offered them a choice. Join a network I controlled, or compete against the technologies I would release next. They joined. Not because I threatened them, because I showed each one a future where refusing made them irrelevant. Grant heard about the meeting and called it coercion. He was right. It was also voluntary. That is the beautiful thing about a perfect trap. The door remains open. Nobody wants to walk through it. Bro gave 12 billionaires a group project and they folded before the presentation slide loaded. By day 180, my intelligence had increased by 180 points. I was only halfway to graduation, and my fortune was approaching $50 billion. I owned towers, factories, research islands, yachts, and a fleet of private jets. I could move markets with a sentence and cities with a phone call. Yet every morning, I still put on a school uniform, sat in the back row, and let the teacher explain material I had surpassed months earlier. That routine mattered. It reminded everyone I was still a student. More importantly, it reminded me how easy it was to pretend. Then, during an ordinary Tuesday class, every screen in the school turned black. A countdown appeared. 10 minutes. Grant's face filled the screens. And behind him, bound to chairs inside an unknown room, were Ryan and Claire. The classroom erupted. Students screamed. Teachers reached for phones that had already lost signal. The doors locked automatically. Grant's face remained calm on every screen, enormous and smiling above the room. He said he wanted one thing, the core of Mirror. Not money, not shares, not an apology. He wanted the machine that let me see markets, cities, and people before they moved. I had 10 minutes to transmit access through a channel displayed beneath the countdown. If I refused, the sealed room holding Ryan and Claire would lose oxygen. Grant believed he had finally created a problem intelligence could not solve. Give up my power, or lose the two people close enough to hurt me. He was wrong in 4 ways. First, Mirror had no single core. Second, the transmission channel was a trap designed to expose every hidden server I controlled. Third, Grant did not understand Ryan. Ryan stared at the camera with wide eyes, then deliberately knocked his chair backward. He hit the floor, shouted in pain, and kicked the wall 3 times while struggling. Most viewers saw panic. I saw rhythm. During product testing, Ryan used 3 kicks to mean something was hollow. The wall behind him was not a wall, it was thin metal. Claire turned her face toward the overhead light. Her hair moved slightly every 4 seconds, even though the room appeared sealed. Ventilation. She coughed twice, paused, then coughed once. 21. She repeated it. 21. Not a number she expected me to understand alone, a reference. During Crown Challenge practice, storage container 21 had a broken fan that pulsed every 4 seconds. They were inside a cargo container. The image shook at regular intervals. A low sound vibrated beneath Grant's voice. I measured it through the classroom speakers. Steel wheels. Rail joints. Speed, 78 miles per hour. The container was on a train. The light above Claire flickered with a voltage pattern used by only 2 freight networks in the country. One had no active routes within the sun angle visible through the vent. The other had 4 trains moving at the correct speed. Grant expected Mirror to search all 4. I eliminated 3. A thin orange dust covered Ryan's shoe. One route crossed red desert. A cup of water on the floor tilted 2 degrees left, meaning the train was on a long northern curve. The audio carried a faint double horn at uneven intervals. An old crossing signal on that route had a damaged second speaker. I knew the train. I also knew why the countdown was 10 minutes. The track ahead crossed a canyon bridge scheduled for demolition. Grant had accelerated the demolition charge timer. When the bridge vanished, the train would fall, destroying the container and every piece of evidence. He had not built one trap. He had stacked 3 and assumed complexity meant intelligence. I stood. The locked classroom door opened because my devices had already taken control of the school network. A teacher tried to stop me. I told everyone to remain inside and walked into the hall as the countdown passed 8 minutes. Adrian waited by the stairwell. He had entered the school before the screens activated. Of course he had. You know where they are, he said. Yes. Grant wants you moving. Yes. You cannot reach the train in 8 minutes. I can reach above it. A section of the school roof unfolded. One of my new jets descended vertically over the athletic field, engines rotating downward. Students pressed against classroom windows as it landed hard enough to scatter goalposts. I walked toward it. Adrian followed. I am coming. No. You need someone who can identify Grant's second trap. I already did. What is it? You. He stopped. Grant knew Adrian had been investigating him. If Adrian joined the rescue, Grant would activate false evidence making it appear Adrian arranged the kidnapping to seize Mirror. If Adrian stayed, he could locate the command network creating that evidence. I handed him a small black device. When the countdown reaches 2 minutes, activate this from the tower. What does it do? Makes Grant believe he won. I boarded the jet. 6 minutes remained. The aircraft launched almost vertically. Acceleration crushed me into the seat. The school became a rectangle below. My flight system had already calculated an interception path, but the path assumed I wanted to land. I did not. At 4 minutes, the jet crossed above the desert at supersonic speed. The train appeared ahead, a silver line racing toward the canyon. Grant's broadcast continued on the cabin screen. He told the world I cared more about power than people. He described me as a narcissist hiding behind inventions and charity. The worst part was not that he lied. The worst part was how much truth he mixed into it. At 3 minutes, I opened the rear bay. Wind roared through the cabin. A compact wingsuit unfolded around me, reinforced by smart material from my laboratories. Below, the train entered the long northern curve. I jumped. For 7 seconds I fell faster than the train moved. Then the suit opened. I turned through the air, matched the train's direction, and dropped onto the roof of the final cargo car. My boots struck metal, magnets locked, the jet climbed away. Bro went from school attendance to tactical skydiving before the bell finished ringing. 2 minutes remained. The container holding Ryan and Claire was 5 cars ahead. Armed guards emerged from access hatches. I had predicted 6. There were 8. That changed nothing important. I did not fight them. Fighting 8 people wastes time and creates variables. I triggered the train's emergency fire system in the second car. Foam blasted across the roof. The guards' visors turned opaque. At the same moment, I reversed the ventilation in the 4th car, creating a pressure wave that slammed 2 doors shut and separated the group. Then I changed the electronic signs along the track to display an evacuation warning behind us. The guards looked backward. I moved forward. One grabbed my arm. I rotated with the train's curve, letting his own balance throw him into a foam-covered safety net. Another raised a weapon. I released the magnetic lock beneath his boots, and the roof's vibration folded him flat before he fired. That was not a punch. The train itself had performed the meat check. 90 seconds. I reached Container 21. Its outer lock had no network connection. Grant had learned something from our previous battles. I studied the hinges, metal temperature, and vibration. The lock contained an explosive trigger. Cutting it would detonate. Opening it incorrectly would seal the vents. So I did not open the lock. I opened the train. I released the entire container from its mount, then activated the cargo crane on the car ahead. The crane lifted Container 21 sideways as the train raced toward the canyon. Ryan and Claire swung above the desert inside a metal box. 45 seconds. The bridge appeared ahead. Explosions flashed along its supports. The center span began falling. I rotated the crane and launched the container forward. For one impossible moment it flew. The train reached the broken bridge. The engine plunged into open air. Cars folded behind it, metal twisting down into the canyon. Container 21 cleared the gap and crashed onto the tracks on the other side. It rolled twice, tore open along the thin wall Ryan had identified, and stopped in a cloud of orange dust. I jumped from the final car as it fell. The wingsuit caught air beneath the canyon rim. I rose just enough to reach the far side and struck the ground beside the container. The countdown reached 0. Grant's signal ordered the room to lose oxygen. The room no longer existed. Ryan crawled through the torn wall, looked at the canyon, looked at me and said, "I missed 1 day of school for this?" Claire emerged behind him with blood on her forehead and fury in her eyes. Not fear, fury. She knew. "You expected this," she said. I did not answer. That was answer enough. Grant's people had approached Ryan and Claire separately days earlier. Mirror noticed unusual vehicles, repeated faces, and communication gaps. I had increased protection around them, but not enough to prevent the kidnapping. Because I needed Grant to move his hidden network into the open. I had not known the exact time or method. I had known he would try. "You used us as bait," Claire said. "I created safeguards. You let them take us. I allowed a controlled risk." Ryan looked from her to me. For once, he had no joke. The anger in Claire's face hurt more than I expected. That annoyed me too. Feelings are variables, but knowing the equation does not stop the result. Before I could speak, Adrian's device activated at the tower. A false mirror core began transmitting through Grant's channel. It contained convincing financial models, city data, and fragments of my systems. Grant's hidden command network opened every protected connection to receive it. Mira followed the path backward. Across the world, screens filled with Grant's internal communications. His sabotage orders, his plans for the jet, his instructions for the kidnapping. Live camera feeds from the people operating his network. I had not rescued Ryan and Claire instead of exposing Grant. I had done both. The evidence appeared on every screen Grant had hijacked, including the schools. His own face vanished beneath his own orders. The public watched him become guilty in real time. Grant escaped before authorities reached his command site. He abandoned offices, aircraft, and entire facilities within minutes. His empire's stock collapsed. Partners turned against him. The 12 billionaires in my network cut his supply lines and communications, not from loyalty, but because wounded predators attract knives. By sunset, Grant had lost more than half his fortune. By midnight, I had purchased several of his most valuable research divisions. It should have felt like victory. Instead, Claire left the tower. Ryan followed her. Adrian remained. "You saved them," he said. "Yes." "You also placed them where saving was necessary." "Yes." "Grant is a criminal." "Yes." Adrian stepped closer. "That does not make you innocent." "I never claimed innocence. That may be the most dangerous thing about you." He looked toward the screen showing Grant's collapse. "You could have warned them. If they knew, their behavior might change. So you valued the trap above their consent? I valued ending Grant's attacks. Do you hear yourself? Perfectly." Adrian's anger was quieter than Claire's, but more precise. "One day, you will calculate that the whole world is acceptable bait." I met his eyes, then stopped me before that day. He stared. "I meant it. A ruler without opposition decays." I did not want Adrian gone. I wanted him sharp enough to detect the moment my intelligence became an excuse for anything. He understood, and hated that he understood. Grant disappeared into a floating fortress built from an offshore industrial platform. Satellite images showed armored walls, private aircraft, missile defenses, and a data center powered by the sea. He still controlled billions, loyal security forces, and enough technology to threaten my network. The world assumed he was defeated because he had lost public respect. That was a mistake. Humiliation does not weaken everyone. Some people turn shame into fuel. For the next 70 days, Grant attacked from the ocean. He targeted shipping routes, factories, satellites, and research sites. He released counterfeit versions of my products that failed publicly. He spread synthetic videos of me insulting disaster victims. He hired experts to predict my moves, and criminals to create moves no expert would predict. I answered every attack. When he blocked shipping lanes, my cargo jets carried entire factory modules through the sky. When he jammed satellites, my buildings communicated through reflected laser networks using clouds as temporary mirrors. When counterfeit medical scanners appeared, I sent free authentic scanners to every clinic that reported one. When synthetic videos flooded the internet, I released a tool that verified camera physics and exposed not only his fakes but thousands of unrelated fakes worldwide. Each attack made my system stronger. Each defense made Grant smaller. Meanwhile, the Daily Point continued. At 300 total intelligence, I read a 1,000-page technical library in an afternoon and remembered the location of every comma. At 310, I could model a crowd of 50,000 people by watching 600 faces. At 320, I solved mathematical problems experts had considered impossible, then hid the solutions inside product designs because publishing them would reveal too much. I learned every major language and dozens of minor ones. I mastered aviation, medicine, robotics, chemistry, architecture, strategy, music, law, and fields that did not yet have names. Knowledge stopped feeling like separate subjects. Biology was machinery that had learned hunger. Economics was psychology wearing numbers. Architecture was frozen movement. Music was prediction with emotion attached. I began doing public demonstrations so ridiculous that people could no longer agree whether I was a genius or a special effect. I played 500 chess games at once without looking at the boards, while answering questions in 12 languages and directing a drone race above the arena. I won 499. The final player was a 6-year-old who moved a pawn illegally, knocked over the king, and declared victory before anyone stopped her. I accepted the loss. Bro trained his whole life for grandmasters and got folded by kindergarten rules. I designed a skyscraper in 12 minutes during a live interview. Construction robots built the first 10 floors by the end of the broadcast. I listened to an orchestra perform an unknown piece once, replayed it from memory on 6 instruments, then added a final movement that made the conductor cry. I entered an international memory contest, memorized every sequence, and withdrew because the scoreboard ran out of digits. The public adored the spectacle. They did not understand it was camouflage. Flashy genius is easier to accept than silent control. Let people see impossible tricks, and they stop searching for the invisible decisions beneath them. By day 250, my fortune exceeded $100 billion. I owned more buildings than I had school days remaining. My yachts formed a mobile emergency fleet. My private jets crossed the world in a pattern mirror optimized every minute. My company's technology powered hospitals, farms, cities, and spacecraft. I still returned to class. My seat in the back row remained empty only when I was landing aircraft on boats or preventing hurricanes from becoming massacres. Teachers no longer called on me. Students no longer mocked me. They watched me with a mixture of awe and fear. I missed the laughter. Mockery had been honest. Worship was not. And then Claire returned to my tower. She placed the old foam crown from the Crown Challenge on my desk. "You are becoming exactly what Grant said," she told me. I looked at the cheap foam beside models of satellites and cities. "No," I said. "I am becoming what he was pretending to be." Claire did not return because she forgave me. She returned because leaving me alone felt more dangerous. That distinction mattered. She walked around the glass room, studying the expanding maps and machines. The tower had changed since the kidnapping. Entire walls displayed global systems. Small lights marked my buildings, aircraft, ships, laboratories, power stations, and emergency centers. From above, the network looked less like a company and more like a nervous system wrapped around the planet. "You can reach almost anywhere," she said. "Almost. And you can predict what most people will do. Most. What happens when you decide people are the problem?" I looked at the foam crown on my desk. "Then I need people I cannot reduce to a prediction." Claire folded her arms. "You mean people who disagree with you?" "Yes, people you cannot manipulate. I can manipulate everyone." Her expression went cold. I corrected myself. "People I choose not to manipulate. That is not comforting. It is honest." She considered this, then pointed toward the city map. "I will help stop Grant. After that, I decide whether I help Adrian stop you." "Accepted. You do not get to accept it like a business deal." "I just did." Claire grabbed the foam crown and threw it at my head. I caught it without looking. Bro had 350 IQ, and still could not dodge the consequences of one sentence. Ryan returned the next day carrying sandwiches. He placed one on my desk and said, "I am still mad. I know. I got kidnapped. I know. The train fell into a canyon. I was there." He pointed at me with the sandwich. "No more using me as bait unless I get to know I am bait. That defeats the purpose of natural behavior." Ryan turned toward the elevator. "Agreed," I said. He turned back and handed me the sandwich. That was Ryan's version of a treaty. Adrian joined us that evening with the first clear image of Grant's floating fortress. It occupied an offshore platform, wider than several city blocks. Armored towers surrounded a central data core. Runways extended over the sea. Beneath the platform, massive turbines drew power from ocean currents. Grant had turned industrial machinery into a private country with no citizens, only weapons. But the fortress was not his real plan. Adrian projected a map of satellites. Over several months, Grant had purchased, stolen, or secretly taken control of communication systems orbiting the planet. He had linked them to financial networks, shipping controls, automated factories, and power distribution. The system copied the architecture of Mirror, but replaced prediction with pressure. It did not merely watch choices, it created crises that forced choices. Grant called it the Crown Engine. Through it, he could darken cities, reroute ships, freeze transportation, disrupt markets, and then offer restoration in exchange for obedience. He intended to manufacture chaos and become the only person able to stop it. A mirror of me, stripped of restraint. Adrian showed the estimated activation date, graduation day. Grant's ego had chosen the stage. He wanted the world to watch me return to the place where I had once been average, then watch every system I built collapse around me. "He will activate early if we attack the platform," Adrian said. Claire studied the satellite map. "Can we disable it remotely?" "Not all of it," I answered. "The network is fragmented. Destroying one part shifts control to another." Ryan chewed slowly. "Can we blow up the fortress?" "No," Claire said. "Can we blow up the ocean under it?" I looked at him. Ryan stopped chewing. That face means it was not completely stupid. It was not. Grant's platform depended on stable ocean pressure beneath its turbines. A precisely shaped underwater wave could force the turbines into emergency lock, cutting the fortress from its primary power for 43 seconds. Not enough to destroy the Crown Engine. Enough to expose its control handoff. But generating that wave required dozens of ships moving in exact formation across hundreds of miles. I owned dozens of ships. The yachts were not toys anymore. They never had been. For the next 100 days, the four of us prepared while pretending not to. Claire coordinated city resilience projects without revealing the real threat. She persuaded local leaders to install independent power, manual controls, and communication backups. Unlike me, she did not arrange choices invisibly. She convinced people. It was slower, messier, and strangely durable. Ryan tested every emergency system by misunderstanding it on purpose. If a control panel confused him, we redesigned it. If a rescue drone could be broken, he found the way. He crashed 14 prototypes, flooded one laboratory, and accidentally launched a medical supply capsule through a cafeteria wall. He called this quality assurance. Adrian hunted Grant's human network. He traced patterns of absence, unusual travel, and synchronized decisions. He never shared everything with me. I approved. Trust without independent power is only dependence wearing a friendly face. I built the counterattack. Every skyscraper in my network became a local command center capable of operating without satellites. Every jet became a moving communication relay. Every yacht became a power station and wave generator. Every factory learned how to switch from commercial products to emergency equipment. Mirror divided itself into millions of small pieces, each useful alone and impossible to destroy together. Grant built a crown with one head. I built a swarm. During those 100 days, my intelligence kept rising. At 360, I could examine a machine and imagine every likely way it would fail across years. At 380, I could listen to a political speech and predict how different cultures would interpret each phrase. At 400, I stopped taking notes. My memory no longer needed external storage, though I still wrote ordinary class assignments badly enough to preserve tradition. The number had become absurd. An IQ of 400 did not mean 4 times smarter than average. Human tests were not designed for it. The scale had become a scoreboard after the game ended. I felt the difference in stranger ways. I could hold models of entire cities in my mind and rotate them like objects. I could trace emotional chains through millions of people. A rumor in one language, a shipping delay in another country, a weather shift over an ocean, and a joke posted by a bored teenager could connect into an economic wave 3 weeks later. But greater intelligence did not remove uncertainty. It revealed more of it. Every solution created side effects. Every intervention changed behavior. Every life saved altered another future. At 100, I had believed smart people found answers. At 400, I understood that the hardest problems had many correct answers and no harmless ones. That realization did not make me humble. It made me careful. Grant mistook care for hesitation. He released a message 30 days before graduation. Every public screen in the world displayed his face for 9 seconds. He said only one sentence: "Enjoy the crown while the lights are on." Then the screens returned to normal. Panic spread immediately. Markets dipped. People purchased fuel, food, batteries, and anything else fear could carry. Grant had caused disruption with 9 seconds of video. I went on camera from my school library. Behind me, students studied for final exams. I said Grant wanted everyone to panic because panic was the first switch in his machine. I told people to continue normal life, use local emergency guidance, and ignore unverified instructions. Then I returned to my desk and finished a worksheet. The image became more powerful than any speech. If the person Grant threatened most could sit beneath fluorescent lights solving high school chemistry, the world could breathe. The market recovered before the school bell rang. Grant attacked my confidence next. He sent Adrian a file containing thousands of predictions made by the Crown engine. The system had modeled our preparations. It knew about the ships, the independent grids, and the distributed mirror nodes. It predicted our wave attack with 94% accuracy. Grant wanted us to know he knew. Adrian placed the file on my desk. Do we change the plan? No. Claire looked at me. He expects it. I expect him to expect it. Ryan raised a hand. I have lost the plot. The Crown engine had been trained on my decisions, just like Grant's earlier AI. This version also modeled Ryan's randomness, Claire's ethics, and Adrian's suspicion. It simulated millions of branches and selected defenses against the most likely combined strategy. So I gave each of them authority to change their part without telling me. Claire could redirect city resources however she believed best. Ryan could alter the fleet formation using rules only he understood. Adrian could abandon the mission, expose me, or attack Grant from any direction. I would not monitor their decisions. Claire stared at me when I explained it. You are giving up control. I am distributing it. That sounds like control with better branding. It also means I cannot use you as bait without your knowledge. Ryan nodded. Character development. I ignored him. Adrian understood the deeper reason. Grant's engine could predict a team following my plan. It could not predict four minds making independent choices while trusting one another enough not to collapse. That trust was the one technology Grant had never built. Graduation morning arrived on day 365. I opened my eyes at 6:17. The blue message floated above me. Intelligence increased by 1. Permanent total, 465. 1 year earlier, I had been exactly average. Now I could look at the movement of sunlight across my ceiling and estimate weather patterns over half the continent. I could hear a plane far above and identify its engine imbalance. I could recall every face I had seen, every book I had read, every lie Grant had told, and every moment Claire had looked at me like I was still capable of choosing who I became. I put on my graduation clothes. Outside, 12 private jets crossed the morning sky in formation. 3 yachts moved into position near Grant's fortress, then 6, then 30. My towers switched to independent power, factories opened emergency lines, aircraft climbed into relay patterns, millions of systems waited. I walked into the school gym and sat in the back row. The seat beside me was empty. Ryan arrived late, carrying his graduation cap in one hand and a breakfast burrito in the other. Claire sat near the stage, leading the ceremony. Adrian was nowhere in sight. That meant his choice had begun. The principal stepped to the microphone. The lights went out. For half a second, the gym was completely dark. Then emergency lights turned the room red. Phones lost signal. The microphone died. Outside, aircraft changed course as navigation networks failed. Across the city, traffic lights froze. Power stations disconnected. Ports locked their cranes in place. Financial markets opened and dropped so fast that numbers blurred. The Crown engine was awake. Grant appeared on the screen above the graduation stage. His floating fortress rose behind him, surrounded by storm clouds and defensive drones. He looked thinner than before, but his eyes had the bright emptiness of someone who had burned every future except revenge. He congratulated me, not for graduating, for building a world dependent enough on my technology that destroying me could now shake the planet. He said every system I controlled would fail in sequence. My buildings would darken, my aircraft would lose direction, my factories would stop, my allies would abandon me when their fortunes vanished. Then, while the world watched the smartest student alive fail from the back row, he would restore everything through the Crown engine. Grant wanted one final image, me asking him for help. I stood. The gym floor opened. Panels beneath the basketball court slid apart, revealing a circular command platform installed during what the school believed had been ventilation repairs. Screens rose from the floor. Antennas unfolded from the bleachers. The scoreboard transformed into a global systems map. Students screamed again, but this time with the confused excitement of people realizing their graduation venue had secretly become a planetary command center. Ryan stared at the machinery. You put this under the gym? The tower was too obvious. You hid a world-saving bunker under the place where we failed dodgeball? The location had unused potential. Bro turned public school funding into the final boss arena. Claire left the stage and joined me at the central platform. She did not ask for instructions. Her city network had already activated. On the main screen, hundreds of urban regions shifted to local control. Hospitals separated from failing grids. Water systems switched to independent pumps. Manual traffic teams entered intersections. Claire had spent months teaching communities to function without me, which meant Grant could not disable them by disabling me. His first attack failed. The Crown engine adjusted. It flooded communication channels with fake emergency messages. Some ordered evacuations toward danger. Others announced non-existent attacks. Synthetic voices copied local officials perfectly. Claire responded by abandoning digital authority entirely. She activated neighborhood signal systems, colored lights, sirens, printed symbols, radio codes, and human messengers. Ancient methods moved beneath modern interference like roots under concrete. Grant had expected my technology. He had not expected Claire to choose less technology. On another screen, my fleet approached the fortress. Grant launched defense drones into the sky. They formed a black cloud above the ocean, each machine linked to the Crown engine. The system predicted the paths of my ships and positioned counterwaves to cancel the pressure pattern Ryan was supposed to create. Supposed to. Ryan looked at his tablet and grinned. The yachts broke formation. Instead of the elegant spiral I had designed, they spread into a shape resembling a duck wearing a crown. One vessel moved too far west, two reverse direction. A support ship spun in a full circle for no visible reason. I had no idea what Ryan was doing. That was the point. Grant's engine tried to recalculate. It analyzed the ship positions, wave timing, wind, and Ryan's previous behavior. Every model failed because Ryan had based the formation on the bites missing from his breakfast burrito. He had created tactical geometry through hunger. The fleet accelerated. Their wakes crossed at strange angles. Most canceled one another. A few combined beneath the surface, invisible and growing. The final wave did not approach the fortress from the fleet. It reflected from an undersea ridge and rose directly beneath Grant's turbines. The platform shook. Turbines locked. Primary power vanished. 43 seconds began. Grant's face disappeared from the gym screen. The crown engine shifted control toward its satellites exactly as predicted. I sent the mirror swarm upward. Millions of independent nodes transmitted through towers, jets, ships, vehicles, and personal devices. Grant's satellites blocked standard channels, so my aircraft wrote data across the sky using tightly controlled radio shadows. Buildings reflected signals from window to window. Weather balloons carried bursts over jammed regions. Even emergency scanners became communication relays. The crown engine attacked each path as it formed. At 38 seconds, it disabled half my satellites. At 34, it corrupted aircraft maps. At 31, it began dumping false financial orders into world markets, creating so much noise that ordinary trading systems could not tell purchases from attacks. I saw all of it. Every line of motion, every machine response, every human reaction. The gym vanished from my awareness. My mind expanded across the network. I redirected aircraft through pressure patterns instead of satellite maps. I used power fluctuations to encode navigation signals. I let the false market orders collide with one another, buying and selling the same assets until Grant's own attack trapped itself in loops. The 12 billionaires I had once given homework activated their resources. Cargo networks opened alternate routes. Factories ignored corrupted commands. Private satellites shifted into relay positions. They did not do it because they loved me. They did it because I had made cooperation more valuable than fear. Grant had built obedience. I had built incentives. At 25 seconds, the crown engine predicted my counterattack. It shut down every route Mirror was preparing to use. The global map turned red. Adrian had warned me this might happen. A predictive system does not need to be smarter than you if it can see where you must move. So I stopped moving toward victory. I deliberately sacrificed my company's central network. Mirror nodes went dark across financial centers. My stock collapsed. Factory systems disconnected. News channels reported that my empire was failing. Grant took the bait. The crown engine shifted resources from global disruption to seizing my abandoned network. It wanted my data, my infrastructure, and the symbolic victory of controlling the tower. For 6 seconds, it became greedy. Machines inherit the priorities of the people who build them. Grant had trained his masterpiece to need humiliation. At 19 seconds, a new signal appeared inside the fortress. Adrian. He had chosen the one path I could not plan for him because he had never told me. While Grant watched the fleet, Adrian entered the platform through a maintenance route opened by the turbine lock. He reached the central control chamber and connected a direct line to the crown engine. His face appeared on a small screen beside mine. "I found the handoff," he said. "Can you hold it? For 11 seconds. We need 12, then be smarter." The line cut. Adrian locked the satellite handoff in place. Security systems closed around him. Grant tried to regain control manually. The engine divided, one half attacking Mirror, the other trying to remove Adrian. 11 seconds. I needed 12. Claire looked at the city map. "What do you need?" "Every local grid to turn off for 1 second. She understood the risk. Hospitals, transportation, water, communications, everything would lose power together. Backup systems should hold. But should is a word people use before memorials. Earlier, I would have activated it myself. Now I waited. The choice was hers. Claire studied the map, contacted regional leaders through the analog network, and made the decision with them. Not for them. "Ready," she said. At 8 seconds, the world blinked. For 1 second, hundreds of cities intentionally went dark. The sudden drop removed the electrical noise hiding Grant's control signal. Mirror saw the Crown Engine's true command path. I struck, not with a virus, a weapon, or a secret code. I flooded the engine with reality, every contradictory market signal, every changing weather pattern, every independent decision Claire's cities had made, every irrational turn Ryan's fleet had taken, every hidden route Adrian had uncovered, every human choice Grant's model had dismissed as inefficient. The Crown Engine tried to predict all of them at once. Its models multiplied, then multiplied again. The system did not explode. It did something more humiliating. It froze. The most advanced strategic machine on Earth stared at humanity and had no idea what anyone would do next. Skill issue on a planetary budget. At 3 seconds, Mirror entered the control layer. At 2, Grant attempted manual shutdown. At 1, Adrian opened every camera inside the fortress. The countdown ended. The Crown Engine belonged to nobody. I did not take control. I broke its central authority and distributed essential functions across local networks. Satellites returned to navigation. Markets separated real orders from false ones. Power grids restarted. Ports unlocked. Aircraft regained guidance. The gym lights came back on. Around the world, cities brightened in waves. Students began cheering, though most had no idea what had happened beyond the fact that the screen said systems restored, and I was standing beneath it in graduation clothes. Grant appeared again. This time, the camera was not under his control. He stood inside the fortress command room as warning lights flashed. Adrian was visible behind reinforced glass, locked inside a security chamber but alive. Grant shouted that I had stolen his system, destroyed global markets, and manipulated everyone around me. Then he said the one thing he believed would wound me. "You are the same as me." I looked at Claire, who had just made a decision I could not force. I looked at Ryan, who had changed my perfect fleet plan into breakfast art. I looked at Adrian, who had entered the fortress without permission and created the final opening. "No," I said. "People around me can say no." Grant laughed. "Until you decide they are wrong." He had found the weakness in my answer. I did not deny it. "That is why they are still here." Grant reached for the fortress's final control. He had one aircraft prepared beneath the platform, a stealth jet carrying a backup copy of the Crown Engine. The floor opened. His jet launched through a concealed tunnel and climbed above the ocean before my fleet could close in. He believed escape remained possible. It did not. I had studied his flight habits, fuel preferences, fear responses, and every route he had used since disappearing. Grant always escaped toward height and distance. He believed being above others meant being safe. 12 of my private jets descended from the clouds. They formed a moving corridor around him, close enough that their pressure wakes boxed his aircraft in. If he turned sharply, he would lose lift. If he climbed, 2 jets crossed above. If he descended, drone swarms rose beneath him. Grant accelerated. My formation accelerated. He fired countermeasures. The jets ignored them because they were flying by visual geometry and pressure, not target locks. He tried to reverse, but another group closed behind. We did not shoot him down. We herded him. Below, my largest yacht moved into position, the same yacht beside which my broken aircraft had once landed. Grant's backup navigation screen activated with a single runway path. He could reject it and crash into the ocean, or follow it. The door remained open. Nobody wanted to walk through it. His jet descended. It struck the yacht deck too fast, bounced once, destroyed a swimming pool, crossed a dining area, and stopped with its nose buried inside the giant foam crown Ryan had mounted near the helipad as a joke. Bro escaped a global defeat just to get arrested inside pool furniture. Security teams surrounded the aircraft. Grant stepped out beneath cameras broadcasting worldwide. His empire was gone, his machine was broken, and the yacht he once used to humiliate others now carried him toward shore as a prisoner. Adrian emerged from the fortress after disabling its remaining weapons. Claire ordered emergency teams to inspect every city system before restoring normal control. Ryan asked whether the yacht's insurance covered villain damage. I returned to my seat in the back row. The principal stood at the microphone, pale and confused. The ceremony schedule on the podium still showed the next student's name. Mine. I walked across the gym floor while screens behind me displayed restored power across the world. Students, teachers, reporters, engineers, investors, and millions watching online stood as I reached the stage. 1 year earlier, Grant had looked down at my desk and told me the world needed followers. Now his fortress was dark, his jet was in my swimming pool, and I was receiving a high school diploma after defeating his global supercomputer before lunch. Claire handed me the certificate. "You are late," she said quietly. "I was handling a side project." She tried not to smile. Ryan threw his cap too early. It hit a ceiling light and fell into the orchestra section. Everyone else threw theirs anyway. I looked across the gym at the back row. My old seat was empty. I had spent a year pretending to be ordinary so nobody would realize the smartest person in the world was sitting there. In the end, hiding had not protected me. It had only taught me how power looked from below. After graduation, I purchased Grant's floating fortress. I removed the weapons, opened the laboratories, and converted the platform into an international disaster response center. Its turbines powered coastal cities. Its runways carried medical aircraft. The room where Grant built the Crown engine became a public research hall with glass walls and no locked doors. My company absorbed the useful parts of his empire. My fortune passed $200 billion, then 300. I bought towers in every major region, more yachts than Ryan could count without removing his shoes, and a new generation of private jets capable of landing on water because experience had made that feature feel reasonable. I solved diseases that had resisted researchers for decades. I built desalination systems that made ocean water cheap enough for farms. I designed orbital factories, floating cities, and power networks that treated hurricanes like inconvenient weather instead of divine punishment. Billionaires who once expected me to carry stones now waited outside my office with presentations. I reviewed their companies the way I reviewed homework, identify the flawed assumption, circle the weak logic, and decide whether the student deserved another attempt. Some called me a savior. Some called me a threat. Both groups were glazing too hard. I was still Ethan. That was what I told myself. A week after graduation, the four of us stood in the tower's glass room. Ryan was testing a chair that adjusted itself to posture. He had somehow made it rotate continuously. Claire reviewed plans for independent city councils that would limit my company's control. She did this at my desk without asking permission. Adrian watched the global map, then every light on one section changed. 8 of the world's largest remaining fortunes moved at the same time. Military satellites shifted orbit, research networks closed their public access, governments that normally distrusted one another began sharing data, private fleets changed course toward the same ocean region. Not Grant, something larger. Adrian zoomed out. "They finally understand what you are." Claire looked at me. "And they are afraid." "They should be cautious," I said. "That is not the same thing." "No." The coordinated movement formed a pattern around my network, not attacking yet, simply surrounding it. The world had watched one student outthink a billionaire, an artificial intelligence, a global sabotage network, and an airborne escape before collecting his diploma. Now the most powerful people alive were doing the only thing people do when a new power appears above them. They were forming a class study group. Ryan's chair spun faster. "Are we in danger?" I studied the map. For the first time since Grant fell, the pattern did not reveal a single controlling mind. It was a coalition built from fear, ambition, caution, and perhaps a few people intelligent enough to know they needed one another. A real challenge. I smiled. At 6:17 the next morning, I would gain another point. The day after that, another. My graduation was over. The world had become my classroom, and everyone in it had just raised their hand.